So the Dobbs decision. This is maybe one of the most excited I've ever been for any sort of political or court decision ever. Um, how should we feel about it? How should conservatives feel? Should we be worried that this is going to affect us in the midterms? Um, what should our feelings be? Let's look at it. So the Dobbs decision, if you don't know, which by now you do, I mean, this is the biggest thing. I'm like way behind in discussing this, but you know what? We need to, and we need to more discuss like broadly what does this mean for conservatism, and how should we feel going into the midterm. So it's still relevant, and we're going to talk about it. But the Dobbs decision, if for some reason you don't know, was the overturning of the Roe v. Wade, which was a decision by the Supreme Court that somehow assumed that somewhere in our Constitution was a right to abortion, which was false to begin with. It was always considered kind of bad law, and nobody, everyone kind of knew it was activist related, and even in a philosophical sense, if we look at the concept of rights being something given to us by being inalienable, given to us by a creator, that was the reason we had the Constitution, was to, hold those rights. And if we take that position, it's really hard to imagine that the creator that created mankind in their image would have, for some reason, also assumed that you should have the right to like kill that human being for convenience. That really doesn't connect, and it never did. It was bad law, and unless we go completely secular with our Constitution, which I know they're trying to do, I get it, they're trying to do it now, but unless you have an entirely secular view, there's just no way you can get to what our founders understanding of a right was and getting to abortion. There's just no way to get there. Abortion is killing another, mostly like 96% of the time out of convenience. You hear arguments of edge cases, but we know those edge cases aren't like real, because in every single state that after the Dobbs decision has made it abortion illegal, with the exceptions of rape and incest, you still hear the same amount of outcry. So the outcry always was for the sake of convenience, because feminist leftists want to show that they themselves are God. They themselves can author human existence. They themselves can author their own futures, and they want to reject a teleological view of reality, in which the fact that we are made in the image of God, and we are supposed to replicate, because there are then more of us to praise Him. And they want to abandon this, and instead they want to embrace some type of like secular humanist view. And thus, it's very important to them, in fact, a sacrament level importance, that they can kill children to secure their ability to be a, dental hygienist full time. But the point being, so one of the more profound things that mankind was made for is the ability to create more humans, and motherhood being like peak level of this, right? Like one of the most profound things you can do as a human is literally bringing more life into the world and then shaping that life. And so it's a level, like it's an importance level of being a sacrament to the left to be able to kill children. And so we find that these edge cases that have been the argument for my entire life, abortion, incest, rape, abortion for the case of rape and incest, was never really what they wanted. And we all knew it. We all knew this is like 2% of cases. This isn't statistical anomaly. It's not statistically not relevant, but it was always the argument. And so it's great now. At least we know, mask off. This was never truly the argument. The states that have made abortion bans since the Dobbs decision are getting the same amount of vitriol and hate and freak out. And most of them are allowing cases of rape and incest as long as it's been reported to the police. So the reality is it was never about this. It was about being able to self-author and make yourself God. You get to determine when there is life instead of a teleological view and a biological view of reality that both reflects the intent of our Creator. And so how should we view about this Dobbs decision? I've been hearing a lot out of the conservative right that, oh, well, I wish this would have happened after the midterms, or maybe this is going to hurt us in the midterms. One, I don't care. I literally don't care. I don't care at all. I wouldn't care if it hurt us in the midterms because that doesn't supersede the fact that this is like probably one of the greatest civil rights victories in the history of mankind. Wow. Literally, like moving the only thing that will top this is when we win and we get rid of abortion forever. Because, yeah, that actually is the goal. The goal is to get rid of abortion forever. And when we win and we do that, that will be the greatest civil rights victory of all time. But until then, this is one of the biggest. At least turning it back to the states means geographically in a lot of areas, we'll get rid of it. Hey, that's actually really loud because your microphone isn't that great. If you didn't notice, you catch on the clacking in the background. It's my wife. I got her on the microphone tonight. Say hey.
Doing paperwork.
Yes. So the reality is that what were we talking about just before that clacking distraction? What was going on? What? Yeah. Okay. So it was never, ever going to be about just simply rape and incest. Many of the states that ban abortion still allow this. It was about, self-authorship and getting to be God. And so how should we feel about this going into the midterms? Oh, yeah, that's where we're at. Okay, so I hear it a decent bit from the right. That's like, will this hurt us in the midterms? Which I don't care about. As I said just a moment ago, it's the biggest civil rights victory probably that we've had in 100 years, maybe ever. Like literally, this might have been the biggest one ever. We're talking about like hundreds of thousands to 1 million lives every single year. You're killing 100,000 to 1 million lives. Like literally murder. This is literally by any metric genocide.
It's just charming and evil.
Yeah, you're chumming for evil. You're literally inviting God's wrath onto the earth. Onto our nation because of this.
Just like every collapse civilization. That's what they've done, and that's what we're doing. We just call it abortion.
Yep. Yeah. Human sacrifice. It's human sacrifice for the sake of secular humanism. I mean, we're just not putting the Moloch statue up there, right? We're just not putting we're not doing it over at the pyramid. We're just doing it at Planned Parenthood, and we're calling it abortion. And the really, really sick thing, I don't know if there's anything more sick to me than when they call this a right, when they're trying to call, when what was that, retard at the Democrat debate that said that, well, I guess they all call it this now, when they call it reproductive justice. It's I don't know of a thing that's more skin crawling, sick way to describe it. That's gross. But will this hurt us in the midterms? That's the big question we're going to look at today. Will this hurt us in the midterms? You see some statements of this, but I actually think no. I think regardless of what they want to tell you, the most staunch pro-lifers are actually women, are actually mothers, which there's actually a lot of in this country. And what we find is that mothers are more staunchly in single-issue pro-life, and pro-lifers are more single-issue pro-life than are the pro-choice crowd. So let's look at this. I'm going to change the screen a little bit here so we can see this. Let's look here. So what's interesting here is, so when we look at this data, the people that say one of many important factors, right? This is kind of the highest, actually. And what we see is there's really only about 15 to 17% by year as an average, a good average, that view a candidate must share their life on, their view on abortion. And what's interesting is of that percentage, people that will only vote for a candidate who shares their view on abortion, 21% of that is pro-life and 15% of that is pro-choice. And then when we go down, ones that don't see abortion as a major issue, 20% of that's the pro-lifers, 39% of that's the pro-choicers. So we see an inversion of this here. So what we see is actually the reality is the people that are most concerned about abortion are in the pro-life circle. So this gets me to political momentum theory, which I believe is a thing. So people don't want to be on the losing side. As it turns out, far more people are followers than our leaders. This is just the reality. And so it's why democracies kind of are a joke and fail. And republics work, democracies just don't. And people generally are led far easier than what we want to believe. They're far less autonomous. They're far less self-led. They just kind of follow. And so because of in political momentum theory, people don't want to be on the losing side. So if they feel a shift, if they feel a change in the wind, it often will recruit people to that side, and it will often embolden people on that side. So what we find in this case is an issue like overturning of Roe V Wade puts it back to the states. Many of the states, in fact, the majority of the states are going to come out as anti-abortion, or it looks like majority of the states, or at least some level of anti-abortion, more than the secular left in their urban centers will. So what that means is we will see a groundswell of support into pro-life. And again, people not want to be on the losing side will likely be recruited in that sentiment, and the people already in that camp will be far more emboldened, which means they're more likely to vote. They're going to be more interested in supporting candidates. And what we're going to see very likely, I think most likely, is a increase of support to the right and a growth from the right simply because of this case. I mean, this has been one of the issues that's been on our party platform for literally decades. Like, there's no reason we should shy away from this now. In fact, it's like kind of cringe and annoying when I hear these people that are like, well, maybe we should do this after the midterms. Like, well, one, I don't know that like saving 1 million like children a year needs to be delayed because of the midterms. Two, I think giving the right literally like a win on a thing that has been on their platform for literally decades. We've heard about this for decades. We've heard about this for like 50 years. We've given awards for pro-life wonderfulness to people and all kinds of stuff. And we've literally seen no actual movement in this. Like, it's been basically a standstill. And ironically, it took getting to this issue to the Supreme Court. So, one, we need to remember the name of the fellow that got to the Supreme Court, which, hang on, let me pull this up because this is important. So yeah, when we win, we need to make sure that we have statutes to, hang on here. I get this right. So when we win, we need to make sure that we put statutes to Scott G. Stewart, who argued to help get rid of this scourge in our society. And so for the record, it's far harder to find the name that you would think. Like, if you try and search attorney that argued, what you'll find is almost a monolithic block for the attorney that argued to save the right to kill children. And so should we think this will deter us from the midterms? Again, the answer to that is no. And it wouldn't matter if it did. It's still the right thing to do. But on top of it, this is like something we've been asking for on the right for literally my entire life. My entire generation has said, hey, we want to do something about abortion. And when we see that Donald Trump's victory in 2016 directly led to the appointment of 3 Supreme Court justices, that right now, if we were to have Hillary Clinton, this decision would not have happened. It just wouldn't have happened. We would have had an entirely different Supreme Court. And we are seeing by the freak out on the left that very clearly the Supreme Court's kind of, arguably the prize. That's one of the big political prizes because it transcends like our 4-term thinking. Like, here as Americans, we think in like politics in like 4-year blocks. A lot of countries, they think in like generational blocks. In the US, it's like in 4-year blocks. And so The one deviation of that is the Supreme Court. And what we see is, we put judges in that were willing to make a good decision in Dobbs, which said this decision very clearly is not in the Constitution. Whether you want it or not, I don't care. I don't care if it's something you want. Whether you want it means literally nothing on it being a right. Like, just because you want it doesn't make it a right. The left really, really, really has this immensely disgusting problem of thinking anything that they want is a right. That's not how rights work. In the United States, right specifically is something given to us by is inalienable, given to us by a creator. That creator would have no vested interest in wanting you to be able to kill children. It wouldn't happen. It's stupid. It's bad logic, and it's just not a thing. And so we see is that this decision saying, okay, it's not in the Constitution, arguably, yet when we win, we put it in the Constitution, but we put it forbidden, all of it. We get rid of all of it. We're going to make it all illegal. Yes, we're coming for your abortions. But until then, putting it back to the states at least is partaking in federalism. And if you want to be like a degenerate, nonsense state with poop all over the streets and have abortion, I guess we'll tolerate it for now. And if you want to be a morally upstanding state and you want to not kill children, then you're going to have that. We're a republic. So unfortunately for the time being, there's some aspects that aren't hashed out in the Constitution that we'll have to accept from your degenerate behavior. And so this is the better way to approach this versus saying, hey, activists have determined that somehow our founders meant to assume that you had an inalienable right to kill children. It's just not a thing. It never was a thing. And it's put back to the Constitution. So when you hear these leftists, these leftoids freaking out about saying it's undemocratic, then vote for it in Congress. This is literally why that exists. This is why a legislative body exists. If you think that the democracy, don't live in democracy, but the republic, if you think the republic with its democratic appointed leaders can pass abortion, then it means that's what majority of people want, unfortunately. But that's what it would mean. So approach it there. It's not supposed to be determined by judges. In fact, that's the irony. When you hear these people say, well, this isn't supposed to be decided by a bunch of justices that are unelected. Well, that was their position too. Literally, it was literally the judge's position is that, hey, this isn't for us to determine. Very clearly, this isn't a right enshrined in the Constitution. Legislation needs to decide this. And if the federal legislation can't because there's not enough consensus, then the states will decide. That's kind of the way our country is built. But I think this is a great win. It'll be historically one of the bigger ones, and we need to make sure to make statues of that dude. We need to make sure to make statues too. Hang on, I know it's Stewart. I know Stewart. I want to get his name right because we owe him that. Scott Stewart. When we win, we put statues of Scott Stewart all over the place. That's what we do. So, and then another 100 years. Leftoids will rise up and try and tear them down. This time we build better walls around the statues. We build a wall at the border, then we continue and build walls around all of our statues and memorials. We're not going to take any chances next time. So anyways, getting rid of Roe v. Wade, best thing has happened arguably in a generation. Huge win for the right, and there's no reason we should worry about this in the midterms because one, it was the right decision, so it doesn't matter. Two, I think this is going to give a huge groundswell of political momentum. And as we see, the data shows us this really clearly. The single issue voters are all pro-life. So the people that are actually the most worried about this are all pro-life. And the thing that we're not talking about yet, but it will be huge, very potentially really big. As we're seeing the massive political realignment around the country, we're seeing people move to places that are more politically associated with their interests. The fact that abortion won't be legal everywhere is going to be a massive, have a huge cultural impact on the people that are willing to live in a particular region based on their preferred behavior. What you're going to see is the places that are only concerned with this single live your best life, thoughterry before you go become a dental hygienist are going to no longer want to live in red areas. What you're going to see in red areas is this big growth of family values. And so what this political realignment could potentially be really, really powerful. And it's going to mean that there are consequences to choosing on where you live. And so if a right-wing state makes a very safe, very healthy, very, very wonderful climate that you want to live in, the thing is, if you're like a degenerate that's literally only interest is like having completely unconsequential premarital sex, you may not move there. And guess what? We don't really want you there. So this is like a win-win. And this may really, really affect part of like this political realignment. So I think this is a win all the way around. Like every single conceivable metric is a win. Congratulations. Good job, Supreme Court justices. And like, watch your back. There's a lot of freaks out there. So anyways, it's a win. We'll see you next time.